As Jessica Green just showed you, the integrators lived lives of great achievement. But what they accomplished with forgiveness and a desire to make the university a better place for those who came after them may mean more than any personal accolades. Nathan Moore explains.
A rock came through my window. The dean came to tell me that I was being suspended for my own safety.
With memories like these, no one would have blamed Charlayne Hunter Gault, Hamilton Holmes, and Mary Frances Early if they never wanted to return to the University of Georgia after their graduation in the early 1960s.
I'm not for integration, I'm for segregation, and I will be until I die.
For 2 years, they endured before going out into the world with their hard-won degrees. And years later, forgiveness and a shared desire to make the university a better place for future generations brought them back.
We were brought up to understand about forgiveness. And so when we were first invited back to the university, I had no problem going back.
Hamilton Holmes Jr. followed his father's footsteps and graduated from UGA in 1990. He says his father's reconnection with Georgia was very important to him.
You know, just after 20 years, being able to reconnect and put aside any ill feelings that he, may or may not have had at that point, and to be able to move forward, I think was a big part of his life too.
That willingness to work with the university is making a difference to students today through initiatives like the Holmes Hunter Lecture Series and the Giving Voice to the Voiceless endowment founded by Hunter Gault and her husband Ron.
If you can have in an institution that has the power that the University of Georgia has in every single way, if you can continue to make the point that we need work as we strive towards a more perfect union, I think that says a lot.
Their efforts, coupled with the university's, have echoed through the decades since the 1960s. To celebrate the 40th anniversary of UGA's integration, the very building that Holmes and Hunter Gault had to fight through crowds to enter in 1961 was renamed in their honor. And earlier this year, the College of Education was renamed for Mary Frances Early, the first black graduate of UGA.
It makes me feel closer to the University of Georgia and know that I am now appreciated.
In the 60 years since the groundbreakers became the first 3 black students to walk under the arch, thousands of students from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds have since graduated from the University of Georgia. So much has changed, and that deserves to be celebrated, but Hunter Gault says we still have a ways to go.
It's so beautiful that if I talked about it too much more, I'm going to have to reach and get a tissue and wipe my tears away. There's a consciousness there that just makes me so proud. And I just hope that in the years that I have left, I can help that development, ongoing development, get stronger and stronger.
Nathan Moore reporting.
While Charlayne Hunter and Hamilton Holmes walked past the arch to pave the way for their own futures, they wound up paving the way for tens of thousands of black students and other students of color. Reporter Chelsea Perry introduces us to a few of the many who owe their futures to what Holmes and Hunter sacrificed in the past.
I am sitting here on the stage, and I am a journalist because I'm standing on your shoulders. Oh, thank you.
Deborah Roberts is a familiar face to millions. You may recognize her from ABC's 2020, ABC World News Tonight, and Nightline, just to name a few. The nationally known broadcast journalist is also a proud University of Georgia graduate.
Thank you. Walked through those doors at the University of Georgia and allowed me to be able to walk through those doors.
Roberts said those words to Charlayne Hunter Gault in 2019 during the Grady College of Journalism's Grady Great Show, a panel discussion consisting of notable journalism alumni, including Roberts, with Charlayne Hunter Gault moderating.
It's just so nice to be alive long enough to see the kind of people that Georgia has turned out, that the college has turned out. I mean, it's just it's inspirational.
But to people like Deborah Roberts, it is Hunter Gault who is the inspiration.
And when we had a chance to sit next to each other that day, it really, I think, affected me because I'm sitting there with all these other former students, and most of them are white, and Charlayne and I are both black, and I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, this woman, made history. And I just, something just came over me, and I had to make sure she knew it. I wanted her to know it publicly, and for all eternity, for the recording. I wanted her to know that whatever success I had experienced, and I'm sitting there looking at her, that I absolutely know that it's because of her.
Roberts is just one of many University of Georgia graduates who achieved success in part because of Charlayne Hunter Gault and Hamilton Holmes' actions on January 9th, 1961. That's when the pair arrived on the campus of UGA, the first Black students to enroll at the university after a bitter court battle. Dr. Daniel Webber is another.
I started following her religiously, especially when she reported from Ghana and also other parts of Africa. For me, I always got excited when I heard her talk on the radio.
Today, Webber is president of Millersville University in Pennsylvania, and, like Hunter Gault and Holmes, Daniel Webber was also a first at the University of Georgia. He was the first Black student in his program to graduate at the doctoral level.
When I attended my first Mycological Society of America meeting as a student, and I was at the meeting when I was in one room with over 200 people, and I realized that I was the only Black person in the room.
Webber had only been in the United States 3 years when he attended the University of Georgia as a doctoral student in botany and microbiology.
If I look at tangentially the impact of these pioneers, I would say the fact that they had to sue to be allowed to enroll at University of Georgia made it possible for me to also be there several years after that.
Today, Daniel Webber has some advice for those who will come behind him. Don't give up on pursuing your goals.
My major advisor was a key person in this whole process because I was the first Black student that he graduated at the doctoral level. And he took a chance on me, and that is what led me to where I am now.
Charlayne Hunter Gault never set out to make history, but rather she and Hamilton Holmes set out to achieve their dreams.
I don't think that the two of us thought, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to make history. I thought that both of us felt almost ordinary about applying and not really being sure what it was going to take. But again, I think that our goal always was to get the best education we could to continue our dream, Hamilton of being a doctor, and me of being a journalist.
And because of the courage displayed by Hunter Gault and Holmes to pursue their dreams, those of us who have come behind them can pursue ours. Chelsea Perry reporting.
These former students you just met and thousands more continue to find inspiration from Holmes, Hunter Gault, and Early. Willie Daniely shows you how their acts inspire other Black alumni to give back to the Bulldog Nation.
Even 20 years ago, we knew 1.9% was not an acceptable number for the state's largest institution.
20 years ago in 2000, Yadu Adajo was a part of that 1.9% of Black students. Though that number has grown to 8% today, she says there's still work to be done.
We have to make sure that we're creating an environment that serves those students of color and that creates an opportunity where they feel welcome, they feel empowered, they feel supported.
The 1961 Club offers that support with money for scholarships.
And they thought it was really important that we create a giving society that shows that we're giving back to students that look like us.
Alumni also find the time to make face-to-face connections with students. In her role as president of UGA's chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, Tyler Norman has learned from people like Monica Pearson, a well-known Atlanta TV news anchor, and ESPN's Maria Taylor.
I often reach out to alumni to help us with programming. We've had some alumni come back and speak at our programs, and they're always there to kind of just help with networking and always just there to be speakers when we need them.
Cheryl Kupong is one of a handful of Black students elected to the University of Georgia Student Government Association. She credits her predecessors for her success.
Black alumni have really been everything for me in terms of being vice president of the student body. I mean, they walked so I could run.
They walked and still stand.
You have our shoulders to stand on. HAMP is right here. beside me. He always is. And so, you have our shoulders to stand on as you build up yours for the next generation.
Willie Danley reporting.
We've taken you on a journey for the past 60 years, a journey that changed the course of the flagship university of the state of Georgia, a journey that paved the way for thousands of students who had a thirst to learn. Since Charlene Hunter Galt and Hamilton Holmes walked into the building that now bears their name, a lot has changed. Jenna Maddox shows us how today's students and the university are working towards continuing that journey that began 6 decades ago.
From then to now, the students look a bit different today than they did 60 years ago. It's more than just the way they dressed. The students then were all white, until Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes' actions desegregated the University of Georgia. Today, of almost 30,000 undergraduate students on campus, fewer than 2,300 identify as Black or African American. That means just under 8% of the student body looks like recent UGA graduate Charlene Marsh.
It was a lot to handle at once, just like being the only person who looked like myself in many of my classes and many of like the organizations that I was involved in.
Marsh still pays attention to what goes on at the university. She was one of its leaders. In 2018, Marsh, Amishadai Grandjean, and Dustin Mizell were the first all-Black executive trio elected to lead the university's Student Government Association. Grandjean says the responsibilities of the group's leadership were not taken lightly.
I was fortunate for us to be in this position because I felt like as students of color, as minorities, we were able to relate to those students and what they felt was going on and be able to be an advocate to administration to learn how we can do something.
In 1984, UGA released its first set of enrollment statistics broken down by race. 5% of the student population identified as so-called, quote, American Negro. UGA changed this identification to African American in 1992.
As the decades passed, the percentage of Black students at UGA increased, but at 8%, that number is still significantly lower than the total percentage of the Black population in Georgia, which is nearly 33%. And students have taken notice.
Though some feel the university could be doing more to ensure a more inclusive future, recent UGA graduate Chris Ferguson says he acknowledges that the university recognizes its past.
I just think that UGA sort of, they make more of an effort to recognize racial issues and like sort of, they make a conscious effort to address racial diversity issues and stuff like that.
Marsh says in her years at UGA, she developed a critical love for the university as time went by.
I think my experience as a Black student, it was certainly frustrating at times, especially as I kind of got more involved in like leadership positions on campus and kind of saw like basically the real deal.
Let's compare UGA to a few other SEC schools. Looking at the percentages of undergraduate students who identify as Black or African American, UGA has a percentage of 8%. The University of Tennessee stands at 6%. University of Arkansas is at 4%. Vanderbilt is at 11%. And Texas A&M is at 3%. When compared to these SEC schools, UGA is doing relatively well in terms of diversity. However, Dr. Michelle Cook, the Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion at UGA, says the university is not where it wants to be, yet.
I would say as an institution, we have definitely come a long way in the last few decades, definitely since 1961 and the desegregation of the university, but we definitely have work to do.
The students agree.
We can definitely do better in terms of diversity.
Yes, they can do better. And we can always do better.
I think there is always room to do better.
Cook agrees, and she says she values the input she and her team work to learn from people who study and work at UGA.
We have a great support team that includes our Office of Institutional Research and others who are pulling data so that we can first make sure we understand what the issues are. Doing the focus groups, and I would say we're probably as a team going to do about 50 focus groups of folks on campus as well as some outside stakeholders, is going to help us to understand what the issues are as perceived by our larger community.
Grandjean says it's not just up to the administrators to tackle this issue.
It's not a job that only the administration can do, though they have a major role to play, though they have a major role to set the tone, set the agenda, to put money and resources and to hire the right people and to execute the right strategies. But it also comes with us as students, with also faculty and staff in different levels and areas, thinking about our words, thinking about our interactions, thinking about how we can be intentional with how we're interacting with one another.
Marsh says she also acknowledges the potential UGA has to increase diversity.
Yeah, I think UGA has a long ways to go. But in some ways, I also do acknowledge that there has been progress. Like, just because things are moving too slow for me does not mean that things have not moved at all. So like, I acknowledge the people who came before me. I acknowledge the trailblazers. I acknowledge, the allies and the co-conspirators, that made these things possible.
One of those trailblazers, Charlene Hunter Galt, has seen the progress too, through 6 decades.
The more things change, sometimes the more things remain the same. And so the issue for us is to be vigilant and to be active and to be brave, because sometimes it takes that too. And sometimes you're going to get pushback, and sometimes you're going to get progress.
Inspirational, not just for Hunter Galt.
Them deciding to be the pioneers and to be the guinea pigs and to be the first one to, break the barrier and attend UGA, it definitely inspires me and definitely even makes you emotional too.
Jenna Maddox reporting.